Okay. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Welcome to the monthly meeting for the Board of Finance, January 2nd. Can we start with the pledge? Mr. Becker, can you lead us off, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome, everybody. We have 5 items on our agenda. Number 1 is to approve our minutes from December 5th. We have 3 resolutions, and then to hear, consider, and act upon any communications. So if we begin with the minutes, can I have a motion to put the minutes of December 5th, 2017 on the floor? Thank you, Jerry. Can I have a motion to bring the minutes of December 5th, 2017 to the table, please? Mr. DeWitt, seconded by Mr. Mottola. So the minutes are now before us. Are there any comments, questions, concerns on the minutes from December 5th? Ms. Esmia.
Hi, good evening. Mr. DeWitt pointed out that the October 3rd minutes seemed to be missing me as a vote on the sense of the body, when in fact I had left the meeting before that point.
Right.
So the minutes should stand as they were written on the 3rd of October. We should not be changing them to reflect my vote.
Actually, I think it's in the,
Okay.
well, that's October.
But in December 5th's minutes, isn't there the discussion about the October 3rd minutes?
Oh, no, no.
Yeah, so just for the record, I'm not sure what the correct parliamentary procedure is, but for the record, the October 3rd minutes were in fact correct as recorded.
Okay, what page in the minutes on December 5th?
On page 3 of 8, under item 3.
The minutes of the meeting, okay, October 3rd.
Right. So if you refer back to the minutes of October 3rd, on page 7 of 10, it's recorded that I left the meeting after item 5, and item 6 was the sense of the body. So I just want to make sure that we don't change the October 3rd minutes.
Okay. Okay.
So
So no change.
by whatever method we do that.
We're-
Yeah,
We did discuss this though, right?
yeah, we
We
did.
did say, right?
Oh, no, you were, yeah, I agreed to, I was thinking of the prior sense of the body, so
All right, so what we're saying is we do not need to change the minutes.
that
of
is
October
correct.
5th. Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on these minutes of December 5th? Okay. Although, Mr. Becker?
So the changes from the October meeting are recorded within here, right? So what I guess the question is, what happens? We don't just strike it completely out of here because this particular vote occurred, but,
It has to be an amendment?
yeah, I don't know what the right,
I don't know.
Well, hold on one sec. No, we can amend the minutes. We can amend the minutes, but we need to amend these minutes. So what you would need to do is make a motion to amend these minutes.
I make a motion to amend the minutes for the December 5th meeting on page 3 of 8 to strike or remove, whatever the correct procedure is, the proposed changes to the meeting minutes of October 3rd.
Okay, can we have a second? Ms. Marmion? Okay. Any other questions or comments about the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. So now these minutes are again before us with the amendment. Any further questions? Comments? Okay. All those in favor of these amendment, of these minutes as amended? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, that takes care of item number 1. Go to item number 2. to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Whereas, as part of the Senior Center 5-year bus replacement plan, it is in the best interest of the town of Fairfield to expend up to $63,000 to purchase a wheelchair-accessible motor vehicle to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities. $48,000 of said purchase to be funded by a traditional 5310 capital senior bus grant under Section 5310 of the Federal Transit Act's Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program as administered by the state of Connecticut. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Michael C. Tetro, First Selectman, be and hereby is authorized to accept in the name of and on behalf of the town of Fairfield a traditional 5310 capital senior bus grant in the amount of $48,000. And further resolved that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Fairfield to sign and execute any and all necessary documents to secure said grant. And further resolved that up to $63,000 is hereby appropriated to fund said purchase. Can I have a motion to put this before us? Mr. DeWitt? and Mr. Zezima?
Yeah.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Zezima, and this motion is before us. Would you like to come on up? Thank you, Terry.
Sure.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Well, this is a grant from the state for $48,000, as you know, and the approximate cost of the bus would be about $63,000. So we have in our senior center donations account funds to make up the difference, and I would like to use that for this bus. The bus gets about we have about 15,000 consistently every year one-way rides. We have about a 200 unduplicated count of seniors that use it. You know, people come in and go, so some sign off and some add on. But it's a very valuable service, and we really could use it. So.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments from the board? Mr. Mottola?
So just a quick question, the $15,000 difference is coming from what account?
So the senior center donations account, so it is not in my budget.
Okay.
So it is in the account that we've reserved for renovations for the senior center.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Marmion?
Thanks. So there's no tax implication for the citizens of Fairfield in terms of, okay. My question is, this is not a, I don't know if the right term is compressed gas vehicle. This is, I know in the past that there's been a lot of excitement over the fact that other buses or vans that the senior center uses were compressed gas, better for the environment, et cetera, but this grant does not go towards that. Can you kind of explain to us, is that a good thing, bad thing, rationale, et cetera?
Sure. The DPW garage mechanics who repair and service the vans have said that this type of van is really preferred over the other convertible gas, that this is much more reliable, less costly to repair. In every way, when you need a repair for the other kind, you have to go upstate, and it takes a long time. A bus is out of service, and so then you use another bus in reserve. It's very inefficient. So, yeah, this is pure diesel.
All right, thank you, Ms. Marmion. Any further questions? Mrs. Leclerc?
I have a question for Bob Mayer. Do we have to put anything in this motion because it says we're going to appropriate the full $63,000 and that the balance of the funds isn't in the budget? Do we have to say where the remainder are going to come from?
No.
No. Okay.
You have a follow-up?
Can
Mary?
I follow up? So what, like, if we don't put anything in the motion, then is it possible it could be taken out of her budget?
I'm not sure that, I'm not sure if that, there is an account, the account has funds in it. I'm not sure if that account flows through, I'm not positive it flows through the general fund or doesn't flow through the general fund, but the money will be taken out of that account. You can be assured of that.
Okay.
So there's an account for senior center donations, because that's where it says it's coming from.
Correct.
So there were donations to the senior center
Correct.
of at least $15,000.
Yes.
Okay. So that won't flow through the town, that's just,
Well, that's where the money's going to come from.
right, okay. Any further questions? Ms.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Did anybody look at whether there's any type of electric bus that might be available?
I did not.
Okay. Only because that seems to be the direction this is going, meaning that when this bus, if you got it, is replaced, it's almost definite that the next one should be 5 years from now will be electric, and there might be one available now because they last longer. There's less repairs. The cost of the electricity is generally less. Many of our buildings have solar on them and can be, I don't know. Do you have electric panels yet on your building?
We do.
You
We
do.
have one.
Do you have any electric
Oh,
charging?
we don't- I'm sorry.
Do you have any electric charging stations there?
One.
One. It'd be interesting to see whether, I'm not sure whether they make a 12-person van, and I know
Okay.
you have specifics in regards to what you need it for and wheelchair accessibility, and it may be too much right now, and it might not be available, but I was just wondering whether anybody had looked at it.
It did not.
Okay.
Um,
Before
but-
you spend money, you might want to just give a look. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
because there could be further incentives with the state for that
Right, right.
as well,
Okay.
with some of the incentives that they're offering.
Thank you.
Just take a look at it.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
If you could just write back to Mr. Mayor and just let us know at some point that if it wasn't available, it's not available.
Okay, will do.
But I support you getting a bus. Was wondering whether.
I assume this will go out to bid, and we can certainly include those kind of questions in the bid proposal.
Okay. Especially if there's discounts from the state, further discounts.
All right.
Okay.
Good idea.
Thanks.
Mr. Mottola, you had a question? You're okay? Okay, any further questions? Just one question. Is there going to be a trade-in of one of these older buses?
Yes. Yes, so then the oldest bus will be put, as I go through the protocol of having it be sold or, what they have been doing with the other buses. So I know that that's what happens. And then we take their oldest bus and we put that one in reserve. So we always have one on standby in case something breaks down.
Okay. So with the trade-in, you get some money for the trade-in? And then
Yes,
where
I
would that
don't
money-
know exactly how much that would be. This is my first go-round with this
Okay.
grant, so I don't know.
I'm just curious where the money, if we've done this before, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, we buy these buses every,
and so we have a
Years.
trade-in every 5 years?
yeah, there's one bus they keep in reserve, then trade in the older bus. So the bus that'll get traded in, I assume, will be the one that's currently in reserve,
Right.
and then this bus that's being replaced will be put in reserve.
And then where does the money go from the trade-in?
Well, it just is reduced from the price,
Okay.
so the less money would be spent.
Okay.
So is it actual trade-in like with the company that we work with? Like it's all done at one time, or do they have to get your new bus and then you sell your old bus?
I don't
know.
know.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry,
I'm
I'll
just
find
clear.
out.
It just quits because if it's a $48,000 grant and we don't need $48,000 because of a trade-in, I'm just curious in how that math works.
Right, I didn't write the grant with the intent of giving any kind of money to anybody for a trade-in. I mean, that is assumed.
Yeah.
But when I wrote the grant, it was not to get a lesser amount or a higher amount from the
I guess
grant.
another question is, how much do these buses cost? Are they 63 or are they more?
Well, they can be. I'm going pretty consistently with what we have used in the past.
They
So-
looked at some prices, and this should have some actually contingency in it to cover if it's not right.
Okay.
Well, I'd hope if you sold it, and it was after the fact, after you'd already purchased, that the money would go back into that fund that, of your fund that the 12,000 came from, or whatever, how much came from that.
Yeah.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah. It seems like it'd be,
Depends how charitable I feel that day.
well, I'm asking you to be charitable.
That's a legitimate question, though, right? Doesn't stuff go back into the general fund when it gets sold? Or since it's senior center, can it go into their fund?
I'm sorry.
When
You mean say if
departments,
they sell,
when
if
surplus
we,
items
if we
are
sell
sold
the bus,
off,
it normally goes to general fund.
Goes to
If
general
the trade-in,
fund.
it'd come off the price, and there'd be less money spent.
So obviously, they should make an attempt to do it that way if possible, so that it doesn't hit this donations account as much, right?
Well, if you don't hit the donations account, you hit the taxpayer account.
I guess, although, I mean, to some degree, I guess something like this, I mean, I know that you went out and did this anyways without any of these questions, but it's not so much just this item, but this probably comes up a fair amount, but if you know, just as a department head, right?
Yep.
That it's going to go towards, it's going to ultimately net out within your own accounts, you're sort of incentivized to try to find these things, and then you can trade things, and you can do that, or you can sell them and they go back in the account. I mean, you did it anyways, which is great, but, I mean, it sort of poses an interesting question in regards to always going to, the default of the
We can
general
discuss it
fund
over beer
versus-
sometime.
Anytime. So,
Okay.
But that's fine. And my only, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Becker.
This account, you mentioned, because it's coming out of this donations account, so there's not a hit to the taxpayer, right?
Right.
But you mentioned that eventually you wanted to use this donations account for some, I'm assuming small, but some level of renovation. So now you either have to wait for it or hit the taxpayer at some point to be able to do that, right? I mean, now you're going to have less money in the account to do the originally stated goal.
Well, I
right?
think that's what the account is there for, is to use it for the seniors. And so we do have funds in that account to continue with some of the renovations that we want to do. So, and we also have the Friends now helping with some of the fundraising.
That's separate. This is just like, hey, I want to help the senior center, here's a check.
Yeah.
And it gets put there versus the general fund, and Friends are doing their thing off to the side.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
If I may. But the Friends Fund is the same fund, no?
It is not the same
No.
account. It is a different account. They're totally separate from any of my funds.
Okay. Mr. DeWitt? Mr. Becker?
I'm good, thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, there is no public, so we are ready to vote. This motion is already before us. And so, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank
Okay,
you.
very
Thank you
good.
very
Thank
much.
Terry?
Okay, that brings us to item number 3. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Whereas it is in the best interest of the town of Fairfield to expend a total of $13,000 for a project entitled Fairfield Harbor Management Plan Update and amend 6,500 of said project costs to be funded by a small harbor improvement projects program, SHIPP, grant as administered by the Connecticut Port Authority. Now therefore be it resolved that Michael C. Tetro, First Selectman, be and hereby is authorized to accept in the name of and on behalf of the town of Fairfield a small harbor improvement projects program, SHIP, grant from the Connecticut Port Authority in the amount of $6,500, and further resolved that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Fairfield to sign and execute any and all necessary documents to secure said grant, and further resolve that $13,000 is hereby appropriated to fund said project. Can I have a motion? Mrs. Leclerc, a second. Ms. Marmion. Okay, this motion is before us. Welcome.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
I'm Jim Harmon. I'm the chairman of the Harbor Management Commission. I'm wondering if you'd like to consider this issue along with the related grant.
I've got to read them both.
Okay.
So we'll start with this
You
one.
want to just talk about this one? Okay. And with me is Bill Hurley, the town engineer, who I'm sure you know. Good evening. And so we're here to ask you to accept this grant, which has been approved and funded by the State Port Authority, and to spend the town's portion of the money on this program. We applied for this grant, and the other one we'll be talking about later. Last year, it was approved by the Port Authority and the State Bonding Commission at the end of November. This first grant is, as you said, for $6,500, which will cover about half the cost of updating the Harbor Management Commission's Harbor Management Plan. The current plan was adopted by the RTM in 1995, so that's 28 years ago. And a lot of the original objectives in that plan have been accomplished. And then at the same time, we have new challenges and goals. So the updates to this plan will give us the guidance and the justification that we need to deal with these new issues. The plan, just to give you a feel for it, is about 180 pages of narrative, and it has about 30 figures and tables that go with it. And this updated plan will also help us with getting permits and funding for future projects to improve the harbor, including dealing with the growing sandbar at the mouth of the harbor, which is sort of the biggest issue that we're dealing with right now. The town's share of this project will come to about half, in other words, $6,500, and the money will come from the Southport Harbor maintenance account, which is funded by mooring holders' fees, so there's no new taxes associated with this, and that fund currently has about $136,000 in it, so it'll be a small dent on that fund.
I'm sorry, how much is in that fund?
$136,000.
Okay.
So that fund is used to pay for maintenance of the moorings, and then we build up some money in that to cover dredging projects and so on, which are, of course, more expensive. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. DeWitt?
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Is that where the other 6,500 is coming from?
Yes.
That account? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any further questions from the board? Mr. Walsh?
So, when boaters pay their fees for moorings and docks, does all that money go into the same fund?
Yes.
Okay. I did not know that was a separate fund. I thought those fees came into the general fund. So they have their own account.
We have our own account.
Okay. So
Number
you
26130.
okay? What did you say?
26130 is the account number.
Okay. So you guys decide what maintenance and things you're going to pay for.
Yes.
Okay. So just as where we were recently presented a plan, or not a plan even, it was kind of it was supposed to be a long-term plan about what was going to happen with the South Benson Marina. You guys collect all that money into an account and decide what maintenance you're going to do, correct?
We're completely separate from the South
Southport
Benson
separate
Marina.
than South Benson.
But the way the Southport Harbor
Yeah.
operates is that we charge mooring permit fees, and for the town-owned moorings, we charge maintenance fees, and that money all goes into this mooring maintenance account.
Okay. And it's only to pay for mooring repairs?
It's to pay for general improvements to the harbor.
Okay.
So including maintenance of the moorings, if we have engineering fees associated with harbor improvement projects, that's the account that we use to pay for those.
Okay. So,
And as I said, if we have a major dredging project, which comes up every 5 to 10 years, that's where the money comes from to pay for that also.
You also been
Unless
involved-
we can get a separate grant for that.
have you also been involved with the paying for I forget what it is, where they take the metal sheathing to keep the land from the water. What is that?
We don't, have not been working on any bulkhead projects, no.
None?
No.
As a town?
Would that be at Perry Green? Are they
Yeah,
doing
well,
work there?
Well, it's always on the list to do work at Perry Green. It's never been approved in the
Okay.
last, say, decade, but at some point, it's something to look into, sure.
All right, is that something that these funds would be used for, or is that something the town would be looking to pay for?
No one has ever asked us to spend that money on improvements to Perry Green.
Okay. Perry Green's just that little piece of land that was
That's-
donated or whatever. That's-
Well, there's two little pieces of land. There's the area right next to the yacht club.
Yes.
That's Perry Green.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually three areas.
Yes.
There's that. There's the small town boat yard.
Yes.
Also known as Yee Yacht Yard, which will be the subject of our second
Mhm.
discussion here. And then there's the lower wharf, which is a third piece of land that's even closer to the mouth of the harbor, and that is actually under the jurisdiction of the Harbor Management Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, the Perry's Green would typically be a DPW, but the lower wharf would be included
Okay.
with the harbor management.
I think it's the lower wharf that I was thinking of.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I was just trying to figure out where
Sometimes it's
these
referred
funds
to-
go, because sometimes we don't always know, are these funds coming to the general fund, are they not? But you've done a good job explaining that. Thank you.
Okay.
Sometimes it's referred to Trev's.
Yeah, trust property, yeah. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Mottola?
Do you get any funding from the town?
We do. We get a small amount of money. I think the total budget is in the $20,000 or $29,000 range.
$2,000.
And that covers the stipend that we pay to the harbor master, and it also covers our secretarial services for our meeting, and we pay for our general consultant who serves as our staff out of that fund.
So basically, you do all the, for lack of a better term, major upgrades. Your goal is to pay for those upgrades, improvements through that budget that you just discussed. Is that correct?
The larger budget
Right.
that's funded with the mooring
Mooring
fees is
fees.
what pays for
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Thanks. So you're updating an existing plan. How far out are you looking at? I mean, you're projecting forward, I'm assuming, for projects, and are you using the Harbor Management Commission as the expertise, or are you hiring outside consultants, and is that what some of this money
Yeah,
is funding?
this money will largely go to an outside consultant who will be doing the bulk of the work updating this plan.
Okay, and how far out, I mean, in terms of updating this plan, are you looking a decade out, 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What's your goal?
The last plan, as I said, was done 28 years ago. I would think it'd probably be more appropriate to update it a little more frequently than that, but this should deal with our issues for the next, say, 10 to 15 years, I would say.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Just one last question. It looks like you asked for $13,000,
Yes.
and they gave you half. Did they say why? Or is it just because that's what they want to do?
That actually came as a surprise to us in the granting process. So they looked at all of their proposals. Some of them were for dredging projects, and some of them were for planning projects, and they said, okay, well, we'll fund, half of whatever they asked for in the planning projects.
So I guess the trick is to ask for more.
Yeah, now we know.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? All right, this motion is before us, so we are ready to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It is unanimous. Okay. Part 2. Nope, I got to read it. I got to put this before us. Or we can have a 2/3 vote to say that I don't have to read it. To waive the reading.
I think the public should hear it, so I'm not going to make that motion.
That's fine with me. Okay. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Whereas it is in the best interest of the town of Fairfield to expend $277,478.20 for a project entitled Southport Harbor Boat Launch Reconstruction, $266,000 of said project, cost to be funded by a small harbor improvement projects program SHIPP grant as administered by the Connecticut Port Authority. Now therefore be it resolved that Michael C. Tetro, First Selectman, be and hereby is authorized to accept in the name of and on behalf of the town of Fairfield a small harbor improvement projects program, SHIPP, grant from the Connecticut Port Authority in the amount of $266,000, and further resolve that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Fairfield to sign and execute any and all necessary documents to secure said grant, and further resolve that $277,478.20 is hereby appropriated to fund said project. Can I have a motion? Mrs. Leclerc, seconded by Mr. DeWitt. Okay, this is before us.
Okay, so as you said, the second grant is for $266,000 of a project that's going to total about $277,000, and this will allow us to complete a project that we've been planning and working on for over 10 years to make improvements at the Yee Yacht Yard, which, as I said before, is the small town boat yard in Southport. We have a deep permit to dredge the area near the launching ramp and the dinghy docks there so that they'll be usable at low tide. Right now, it's essentially, when there's a low tide like we have in the last couple days with a full moon, it's essentially a mud flat there in that area. So the grant will allow us to dredge that area to a depth of 3 to 6 feet at low tide and make the dinghy docks and the launching ramp be usable all day long. Along with this project is a contribution by the town of about $11,500 to complete improvements to the launching ramp, which were mostly done in 2016. And the money for this will come from a capital account that was set aside for this dredging and improvement project a number of years ago, and that account currently has a balance of $42,000 in it. So we'll be using a portion of that account.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. DeWitt?
Who's in charge of the capital account? You referred to?
The Harbor Management Commission is.
So there's yet another account.
Yes.
So just in general, I'm not going to hold up any motions tonight because of this, but if we approve this, we'll have approved tonight 3 resolutions without enough detail to specify $33,000 worth of funding to the town. So I'll make a recommendation that going forward, nothing to do with you, right? But we make the math work. So if it's saying, if we're going to say we'll get a grant for 266, we should do some kind of math that says, you know, 11,500 comes from somewhere else in the actual resolution. I mean, it's just internal. This isn't a bond thing, right?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Oh, I
We have
think.
3 resolutions before us that talk about a total and a grant, and then there's a difference. And we never talk about in any of these resolutions where the money's coming from. And it's 3 different sources.
In the resolution, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, in the 14 points at number 12, the financing part, we do include that total number and break it down that way. And I don't want to speak for the First Selectman or Bob, but on the resolution, I believe they had just had to use it for, because that was the money that was being given to the town, so we had to specify in the resolution that the other amounts have already been appropriated. We even have the,
No, and
yeah.
I'm totally fine. There's no part of me doesn't think there's money available. I'm just saying in these resolutions, so we're sitting here tonight, 3 months from now, if somebody says, pulls this agenda up and says, by the way, where'd that $11,000 come from?
Yeah, but we agree.
The resolution
Yeah.
should stand on their own is kind of where I'm at.
Okay, yeah, we feel that it might have popped up that way, that's why we at least included it in the 14 points.
Yeah.
'Cause-
It's in the discussion, it's in the minutes, it's there, but if you want the resolution, we'll try to remember to do that.
Thank you.
Are there 14 points? I'm only seeing 6.
It's, you know what, in the back,
Right here.
back up,
At the very, very end?
I think in the backup, we have it, but
Yeah,
not
there's a-
in what was handed out to us. It got cut off for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, there's about 30 pages worth of backup on each of these grants.
Yeah, there's a lot of backup. Mr. Walsh?
In regards to the funding, specifically the state funding, by taking this state funding, currently, well, if we take the state funding, does that allow anyone to use the harbor? To use our launch? Because technically, in many other projects, once you stick your toe into that water for forever, you must allow anybody who's a resident of the state of Connecticut, because you're using state dollars, to be able to use your asset. So the question is, will anyone in the state of Connecticut now be able to use the ramp, the launch?
I think that the answer to that is that that's the case already.
It is.
In that, for example, for moorings, we maintain a waiting list for moorings, which is open to all comers. Anybody who wants to put up $40 to get on the list can get on the list, and they don't need to be a town resident to do that. And the same, I believe, the same applies to permits to use the yacht yard. So there's already a provision for people from out of town to use the yacht yard. And that was part of the whole discussion that went on in the adoption of the original harbor management plan and getting the Corps of Engineers to do the dredging project back in 2004.
Okay. But, so before 2004, were others allowed to use the, out-of-towners allowed to use it?
It was much more difficult than it is now.
But in 2004, a decision was made to have the Army Corps come in, and based on that, anyone in the United States, I guess, at that point in time, since we're using federal funds at that point, could use the ramp and also apply to use the moorings.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions from Ms. Zezima?
Good evening, guys. Happy New Year. So just for everybody's clarification, I guess, so the funds that are coming out of this account you just described, what are those taxpayer funds, or is it similar to the other two?
Are you talking about the $266,000 in the grant?
That 11,000
The 11,000.
and change, yeah, that's coming from a capital account, you said.
It's the 11,000 is money that I suppose was originally paid by taxpayers.
Right.
Was appropriated for the purpose of
That was
making
approved,
these
yeah,
improvements to the
previously.
boatyard many years ago.
And then the other question, you said you have a deep permit to do the dredging.
Yes.
So what about sampling and, the process?
You
With
mean
the
for
soil.
contamination and so on? So this dredging project involves about 2,400 cubic yards of material, which is quite small as dredging projects go. It is contaminated material, and we also have a permit for the Corps of Engineers to dispose of the material at the Mid-Sound disposal site. And the requirement of that permit is that it be capped with 25,000 cubic yards, so that's about 10 times as much of clean material. And my understanding is that the way that works is that those projects are coordinated by the Corps of Engineers. So they would have us do our project early in the dredging season, so in the October, November timescale. And then they would arrange to have a project that's done later on, dump their material on top of ours.
Okay, thank you. So there's no liability to the town or any issues that may come up?
The permit, there are requirements in the permit about how any contaminated material has to be dealt with, and then we'll enforce those requirements through our contract with the dredging contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there should be no liability if we follow the conditions of the permit.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions? The general grant conditions is pretty, well, it's a fairly thick document. Do you
Yes.
guys actually, read this and go over it and ask questions to make sure we're all in compliance?
I'm pretty familiar with it.
Okay.
The type of requirements it has, for example, is that we keep track of the money that we spend and not spend the money on anything that's not described in the grant application. And if there is money left over at the end, we have to give it back to the state.
Okay. Very good. Any further questions? Okay, this motion is before us. We're ready to vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're at item number 5, to hear, consider, and act upon any communications. Mr. Mayor, you have anything?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, does anybody? Then that takes care of item number 5. We had 163 pages of backup. And for a 45-minute meeting. But maybe that's why it was a 45-minute meeting. Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
I think it's because you're chairman again. That's what I'll continue with that.
Ms. Nezama, seconded by Ms. Marion. All those in favor? All right, good night.